Hi, everybody. Welcome to Facebook Live. Sorry about the slight technical difficulty there. Um, Thank you for joining us today. I know that Ilya will be joining momentarily as well. And today we're going to be speaking about landlord-tenant law and what is happening in the state of California right now. Um, so let's give Ilya a few minutes here to join us. And once she does, then we can get going with our event. All right. Um, well, thanks for joining, everybody. I am Ching Chow, and I am a managing partner at a law firm called Chow and Wu, LLP. We are located in Pasadena, California, and we specialize in real estate, business, estate planning, and family law. I personally head up the real estate and business practice areas at the firm, and today we are here to discuss the current affairs of landlord and tenancy law in the state of California. So, as many of you know, on March 27th of 2020, Gavin Newsom issued an executive order, more specifically N2830, banning the enforcement of eviction orders for renters affected by COVID-19. This executive order was initially only supposed to last until May 31st and was supposed to help renters and tenants impacted by the pandemic. Since then, however, the eviction moratorium has been extended first through July 28th, and most recently, the moratorium has been extended to September 30th, 2020, based on Executive Order N7120. That means that landlords cannot file evictions on residential or commercial tenants, until such time as the state of emergency has expired, and at the earliest until September 30th, 2020. So, with that being said, and I sincerely believe that there's a possibility that this eviction moratorium will be further extended because there is just an exponential spread right now that we're experiencing in our state, and cases are just going through the roof. We're already waist deep in COVID infections, and we're still only in the first wave of infections. So, a little statistic for you. As of today, July 9th, 2020, there are 289,468 confirmed cases in California and 6,562 deaths statewide. It's pretty overwhelming. As for County Los Angeles, there are 121,200 infections and 3,579 deaths in just our county alone. So as a public announcement, please, please, please wear your face masks and practice social distancing. It'll help us get through this pandemic safer and faster and get us back on track to some sense of normalcy. Okay, turning back to the law. The statewide eviction moratorium applies to both residential and commercial tenancies. And what it states is that an eviction case, whether it's residential or commercial, cannot proceed while the declared state of emergency remains effective or for 90 days after it ends, even if the eviction is not related to COVID-19. All right, even if it's not related to COVID-19. Courts can't issue a summons, which once served starts a tenant's time clock in terms of filing a response or doing whatever they need to do to respond. And landlords cannot enter a default judgment against a tenant who has not responded to the complaint or summons that's filed by the landlord. So there is really a hold here, which creates a lot of problems, which we'll discuss in a minute. Court trials, if the action was filed before this moratorium, have been delayed for at least 60 days, at least. All right. So the question then is, are tenants obligated to pay rents to the landlord? I mean, even in light of this moratorium and these orders, are they obligated to pay rent? And the answer is yes, absolutely. it is imperative upon them to fulfill their contractual obligations. So whether you're a tenant or a landlord, it goes both ways. And whether we're talking about a residential property or a commercial property, there are contractual obligations that are in place whereby both sides have to abide by their obligations. And for now, we're talking about tenants paying rent despite this COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 specifically does not change any legal obligations unless it's indicated in the commercial contract. Doesn't affect residential, but it's very rare that I've seen in the last few months dealing with this on a daily basis, any type of provision in a commercial lease capacity that affords the tenant to get out on a pandemic based on what's called force majeure. It's very tough, and we won't get into the nitty-gritty of that yet for this purposes of Facebook Live, but I've been dealing with this quite often. The takeaway here is that there is an obligation to pay rent, all right? And even though there's a moratorium in place, it doesn't relieve tenants of their obligations. But what the current moratorium does is it prevents landlords from enforcing their rights against tenants and to regain possession of their property back until at least 90 days after the state of emergency has been lifted. Right? That means that although courts are not taking actions on most eviction cases, the tenant is still contractually obligated to pay rent. So what does that mean? What must tenants do in order to qualify for a rent deferment? Now, in order for tenants to qualify or justify for not paying their landlord's rent during this lockdown period, during this eviction moratorium, and just during this period of time, what they have to do is they have to do a few things based on local ordinances in the cities in which they live. And there are generally a couple factors, and I'll just give you kind of the broad strokes of what they are. Tenants have to demonstrate that they have suffered a COVID-19 related decrease in household or business income. That could be demonstrated by a notice of a layoff, a furlough notice, a reduction of the hours, or business hours worked, or if the tenant or a family member has contracted COVID and as a result has an increase in medical bills because of that illness. Some additional factors which impact all parents is that the tenant is required to take care of their children because of school closures. And as a parent, we all know how frustrating it's been to take care of our children and educate them at our home, and that definitely has had an impact on the capability to earn an income for many. And so that is one of them, which is that the child care related expenses due to the pandemic has created a financial hardship on the tenant in order to pay the landlord rent when rent becomes due. And then another one that is a very common one is that the lockdown orders have been in place. We were all subject to lockdown orders until the end of May, and then then it got further extended. We went through all the phases of openings and reopenings, and then now the pandemic is soaring. And so I suspect that there is going to be an additional lockdown, and that too will qualify for a hardship caused by COVID-19, which prevents tenants from paying rent. So those are a few of the factors that tenants need to satisfy. Now, what tenants have to do if they do experience these things is they have to put it in writing to the landlord. The ability to defer or not pay rent does not necessarily mean that you do not have to pay rent. And so it needs to be in writing, and it needs to, based on local ordinances. Oops, excuse me. I'm trying to bring Ilya on here. So what they are, the tenants must notify the landlord in writing within a set number of days based on the local ordinances in which the property is located. And they have to demonstrate this hardship. The number of days of the notice to the landlord, which must be in writing, will depend on the specific city in which your property is located. All right, so for example, the city of Pasadena has a different ordinance than the city of Arcadia, and so those factors can all be determined based on city ordinances, and you can go online and take a look at what your specific city provides by way of needing to notify the landlord. In certain cases, you have to do it before rent is due. In other cases, you have to do it within a period of time, such as 14 days after rent is due, and you need to document that and put it in writing that you are experiencing hardship and thus cannot pay for rent at that time. Additionally, most local ordinances require that tenants document the COVID-19 financial hardship to justify the non-payment of rent. So, just writing a letter itself is insufficient, as the tenants will sadly find out in court down the road. But that what they have to do is they have to provide examples of financial hardship, which include, again, the notices of termination, layoffs, furloughs, pay stubs, medical expenses, or loss of revenue in excess of 40% pre-pandemic for commercial properties. Let me now try to bring on Ilya to the live feed here. And if you would just bear with me for a second. I am new to Facebook Live, and so I apologize for the technical difficulties. All right. I am having a little bit of a difficulty doing that, so we will proceed for now, and we'll bring Ilya on shortly. So turning back to what landlords can do during this time, well, if there's any comfort in this whole situation under the law, is that the tenants are still contractually obligated to pay rent. I mean, they are. As I said, the contract goes both ways, and the pandemic itself is not going to be able to change that. So what landlords can generally do during this time is they can actually communicate with the tenant and confirm that the tenant has been experiencing COVID-19 situations. You can't just say, well, we're in a pandemic, so I'm not going to pay, when you have an ability to pay. So with that being said, what we've been doing is we've been asking for financial documentation to prove the hardship. And if there is such a financial hardship and it can be ascertainable with documentary evidence, then that's understandable, all right? But what landlords can still do at this point is to negotiate some type of payment plan with the tenants to the extent that the tenants can make some type of payment toward the landlord despite the financial hardship experience, right? Because there's been openings and reopenings, and there are some support that come in from the CARES Act, and so there's a possibility that tenants can in fact pay, and for the most part, tenants do pay when they can, or you hope they do. And so for a landlord, the old adage rings true, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. So by way of example, if rent is $1,500 and tenant can receive $500 of that at this point, $500 in hand is better than the alternative. So gathering the financial proof and to determine the financial difficulties now and negotiating a payment plan if possible is definitely recommended. That's something that we're pushing for on behalf of a lot of our landlords, and it is a tough time. It is a tough time, so we are doing our best to work with them, but you can't just say, hey, I'm not paying you because I'm not paying you, all right? All right, so what is the remedy? Because the reality of it is a lot of people are furloughed. Unemployment is the highest it's ever been, and it continues to rise, and we anticipate that it will continue to rise. And so what are landlords to do? Because inevitably, landlords have financial obligations to their lenders as well. So the federal government, in its infinite wisdom, and I say that tongue-in-cheek these days, but in their infinite wisdom, they have implemented the CARES Act mortgage forbearance, which allows landlords who experience financial hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic to request a forbearance for up to 180 days. All right, And so what you can do is you can, as a landlord, you can contact your loan service provider and request a forbearance. All right, and landlords, if you haven't already done so, I recommend that you do this immediately. Reach out to your lenders. The request is very easy today. Initially, when the pandemic first hit U.S. soil and this program became available, a lot of landlords, a lot of our clients were making calls and were on calls for or on hold for hours at a time and not being able to get a hold of the lender. And the lenders, what they have done is they have modified their systems so that you can actually just go online and click I need assistance, when you log into your account with your mortgage and make that request. It's supposed to be a no question asked type of situation other than for the landlords to say, I have experienced COVID-19 related financial hardships. And naturally, if your tenants are not paying you rent, then you have experienced financial hardship. All right. So get that 180-day forbearance if you haven't done so. And based on what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has indicated as well, you also can make a further 180-day request after your first 180-day request or forbearance period expires for a total of 360 days. And so it could be up to a year in which landlords do not have to pay the lender because tenants are not paying them. So it's a very powerful tool that landlords can utilize in their toolbox in order to deal with this non-payment rent issue. Now, under the CARES Act, there's a forbearance program that I've mentioned, but this inevitably begs the question from a lot of my clients as to, well, is that going to impact my credit? And if I take a forbearance, is that going to reflect poorly on me down the road as a borrower, or is it going to impact my credit score? And the answer is it's not supposed to. And so it's, you can make this request. People understand that people are suffering right now, including landlords. And so this is something that I would utilize just so that the stress of the non-payment from the tenants is not keeping you up at night as a landlord. All right. So that being said, Governor Newsom in his executive orders has also requested that banks and other financial institutions halt foreclosures or related evictions due to the state of the emergency. And so there's really, at this point, no risk of foreclosure or losing the property, or at least just like the moratorium and eviction prevention at this point, landlords will not lose their property during this period of time, and probably for a period after the state of emergency is lifted, whenever that is. So rest easy on that. All right, so next, there's also another program in place that allow landlords and tenants to utilize in the city of Los Angeles, distinguishable from the county of Los Angeles. If your property is located within the city of Los Angeles, the city has implemented the Emergency Renters Assistance Program, and they have allocated $103 million to provide a rent subsidy for Los Angeles city renters impacted by this COVID-19 health pandemic. And it is anticipated to assist 50,000 Los Angeles households. The Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department, HCIDLA, it's commonly referred to by its acronym, is charged with the implementation of this Emergency Rental Assistance Subsidy Program, and it provides for eligible residential tenants in the city of Los Angeles who are unable to pay by giving them grants of up to $1,000 a month to cover monthly lease rent and a maximum of $2,000 per household. So that is some type of assistance that the city is providing, and these rent subsidies will be paid directly to the tenants' landlords on behalf of tenants. And they apply to multifamily as well. Doesn't apply to commercial, such as industrial retail space, but anything where the tenant is using the property that's being rented as a domicile or as a residence, this program will apply to. All right, and all they have to do is meet 3 criteria, and the criteria are that the residents are reside in the city of Los Angeles, and regardless of their immigration status, they qualify for that. So even if they do not have any type of green card or citizenship or anything like that, this program still applies. The other criteria is that the household needs to provide proof of tenancy. They need to have already been there prior to the pandemic as a tenant, and that can be reflected by a lease agreement that they can provide for the program, and that the household annual income is at or below 80% of the area median income level prior to COVID-19 crisis. So there needs to be a proof of their income as well in order to qualify for the program. But if you have a property located in the city of Los Angeles, or if you are a tenant living in the city of Los Angeles, I would recommend looking at this program. You can get online and type in HCIDLA, or you can type in Emergency Renters Assistance Program. This should come up. HCIDLA is accepting applications currently starting next Monday on July 13th at 8 a.m. And they're going to be taking applications all the way through Friday, July 17th, so for that week until 11:59 p.m. So if you're a landlord or a tenant and you qualify for that, please, please, please apply for that before the $103 million subsidy runs out. It's a grant. It's like free money, kind of like the PPP. If it's gone, it's gone. So I definitely recommend that you get on it and be one of the first to apply. All right. So with regard to commercial landlords, as I mentioned, the tenant has a contractual obligation to pay rent. So if you are in need of any type of legal representation in demanding financial documentation or proof of COVID-related hardships from your commercial tenants, or require negotiation or payment plans to be worked out, or just need general strategic planning, our firm is here. We've been completely slammed on this issue. Among other things right now. It's been a pretty hectic time, but we are actually doing a really solid service to both landlords and tenants because, the circumstances and the situation are all different depending on your specific needs. And if you need any assistance at all, please feel free to give our office a call to set up a consultation. My number is 626-698-0088. 626-698-0088, or feel free to email my staff at info@chiaowu.com, chiaowu.com, info@chiaowu.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. And if I can get Ilya here to join and to ask any questions, that would be wonderful. So thank you. And let me see what I can do here. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log off at this point and see if I can get a hold of Ilya, my savior. And thank you, Ilya, for coordinating this and arranging this. And next time we will avert all the technical difficulties. Thank you.